Welcome back to Built to Ship, the podcast where we go behind the scenes with founders and product leaders shipping real AI products into the world. Today, I'm joined by Aidan, co-founder of Rezora, an AI voice platform built for real estate teams that automates lead follow-ups and much more. Aidan, it's good to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Yeah. Well, I want to start maybe first with your background. What were you doing before Rezora? Tell us about the founding story, why you made the leap to start a company, and what that's been like.
Yeah, so my path has been really circuitous. I was actually in politics for a long time, and then after jumping out of that, I was a real estate agent for a little while. I worked in commercial real estate, and then the market was really down during COVID, so I kind of just by chance fell into enterprise fintech sales. I was doing that for the last 2 years, but that really helped me kind of build my understanding of how to build a tech product, how to sell it, and then I met my co-founder back in February, and he was already building kind of a alpha version of Rezora. Quit my job in May to go full time on it, and we've been working on it ever since.
Amazing. So I imagine like your experience in real estate is lending itself to this product. What did you see in your past life as a real estate agent and someone in that space that you're bringing with you to Resora?
I think just the foundational understanding of where real estate was at that point is a really good grounding as to how much opportunity there's to transform it with AI tools now. So, when I was a realtor, there was no AI. ChatGPT hadn't come out. Nobody was using any serious tools. There was essentially a CRM, and you would use your phone to cold call leads. And then maybe if you were really advanced, you'd have like a lead scraper or a lead generation tool or something along those lines. But it was also the same thing on commercial real estate. These really outdated tools and very small tech stacks.
Makes sense. And there's a lot, I'm sure, to like transform in real estate when it comes to technology and AI. Where are you guys starting? What do you see for the long-term vision? Where you're going to go?
Yeah, so Resort is starting really niche right now. What we're totally focused on is just helping real estate agents book new meetings and scale their outreach by being able to automatically call any leads that they have. Down the road, we want to make Resora something akin to the Stripe of AI voice sales. So building out voice agents for any vertical. Right now, we're focused on residential and commercial, but we want to do this for property management and eventually get into industries that are not even adjacent to real estate, like insurance and debt collection, auto sales, and all that kind of stuff.
That's great. Yeah, and I like it's always hard as a founder to like stay focused on something. So being really niche is oftentimes like a good choice. So kudos to you guys for starting in a
Yeah.
specific focus. Are you also specifically focused on certain regions, or is it all of the US or beyond?
Yeah, we're both based in New York, and my co-founder, who is also a realtor, was a real estate agent here for 3 years. So he really understands the market. His connections are here. My network is also here. So we want to be really laser focused on getting kind of our first user base and strong returns and credibility in the city. But obviously, this can scale nationally very easily, and there's no restrictions as to where Zora can and can't operate outside of some small tweaks.
Very cool. So, what are the features of the product that leverage AI? Obviously, it sounds like there's a voice component. Maybe talk us through that. And how do you structure it? Is there like one voice agent, or does it have sub agents or tools that it uses? Tell us more about that at a high level architecture.
Yeah, totally. So the whole platform is essentially AI. I mean, what you have is a dashboard, and once you log on, you can kind of see all the calls that have been placed, anything that's running, all the appointments that have been booked. But the way that it works is it's just a set of AI voice agents, and each one has been fine-tuned using ChatGPT to correspond to a specific lead type. So there's one AI voice agent for expired listing leads, another for open house bookings, all that kind of stuff. And then there's a few others that we're working on, a few others that are already available. That's really kind of the main AI component is just ChatGPT. And then on the voice side, we're using 11 Labs, which is the most advanced kind of voice synthesizer model. And then everything else is just a little bit of React and JavaScript and retail on the back end to kind of review all the calls that are being made and look at the phone numbers and everything like that.
Very interesting. I kind of want to ask about what you mentioned about retail and reviewing calls. I'm sure there's a lot of volume that you're going to have to handle, a lot of different types of ways people ask questions. Sounds like you're approaching this first and foremost by breaking up into specific agents so you can kind of improve quality on the different types of the process or the types of tasks. But how are you then, once you have people calling in production, how are you monitoring, like, what are they asking about? How's the agent doing? Is that mostly through like retail? Are there other tools or methods you use to kind of monitor and analyze what people are asking for and how to improve the agent over time?
Yeah, so the most important, kind of the most powerful part of Rezora is that every single call that's placed, we use to improve the model. So it understands whether the conversation was successful, whether it wasn't, and it learns from every conversation that we're having. So right now, we're just kind of manually going through and grading that feedback. But down the road, we are building out a series of features where essentially Rezora will be able to understand all the context from each call, react on the fly and improve, and then of course take all the data that we've already given it and continue to make itself better.
Great. And when it comes to actions, do you have, is Resora also taking action generally, or is it mostly kind of informational, like talking back and forth with the customer? Is it also like going and scheduling appointments or things like that? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so the real action is just kind of placing the phone call. It's also connected to the real estate agent's calendar. So once the person who's on the call kind of agrees to a time, it'll go ahead and through a Cal.com integration, just book that meeting directly onto the realtor's calendar so they can show up in person and have that interaction. But we do want to add features around being able to follow up with text messages and emails and be a little bit more agentic in terms of engaging the conversation in a bunch of different ways.
That's great. And you mentioned ChatGPT. Is that the main sort of like LLM under the hood that you're using? Do you use any frameworks? Like, I mean, you mentioned 11 Labs as well for voice. Are you using any frameworks like LangChain or any other tools that you'd recommend or can share your experience with?
For the most part, it's really just ChatGPT that's provided the majority of what we need right now. There's a lot of tools that we're kind of playing with and under consideration, and we're figuring out what our roadmap is going to be for 2026 outside of the first few kind of essential builds. But the Resort knows everything that ChatGPT knows in terms of speaking about specific neighborhoods and maybe answering a question about, oh, does this apartment have two bedrooms or two bathrooms or that sort of thing. But I think the other real power is going to be once we build out an API connecting this to websites like the MLS, which is just an index of all the properties for sale in the country, so that you can get really specific about, oh, how are the schools in this neighborhood? How far away is the next park? How long would it take me to drive to the grocery store? All that kind of stuff.
Awesome. No, that makes sense. It sounds like you guys are taking an iterative approach and adding more and more, relevant data that'll expand the capabilities and the questions that Resora can answer. As
Mhm.
you're moving towards that, and before you have those integrations, is there a way that how do you keep track of like people are asking this question that the agent can't handle, therefore we should add to the roadmap like this API integration? Do you have a way to keep track of that? Because that is a challenge we've heard from a lot of people. There's so many different things that a human could ask an AI, and as humans get more familiar with what these agents can do, they start to get more creative in like what they're trying to push the limits. And yeah, do you have a way to kind of keep track of that? Is it mostly manual review? That's what we hear a lot from people. Any tools you use for insights on what people are asking Resora for?
Yeah, we haven't deployed any tools for that. Right now, it is pretty manual just because the number of calls is kind of at a manageable rate since we're still in beta. But the Resora can automatically mark the call as to whether it's been successful, unsuccessful, or kind of something in the middle. So, for the most part, we pretty much just ignore the unsuccessful calls, and most of those are just wrong numbers. But I think the main takeaway has just been that every unsuccessful call, if it's something that Rosora said, just adding additional guardrails to the ones that we've already deployed in terms of, oh, don't talk about this, kind of redirect the person towards this conversation flow, and just really understanding like what's the fastest way and the fewest amount of conversational turns back and forth that you can get someone to just be like, okay, yes, I do want to meet with this realtor, and here's the time that I can do it.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense. And oftentimes, human in the loop is the best way to evaluate or grade these conversations. And so, you'll hear a lot of stuff online about people setting up these like advanced automated eval situations. And it turns out like that isn't always the best way to do it. That's not always what people are doing in production. So it's always helpful to hear just, what actual founders are using for these systems.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask was you mentioned earlier that you kind of have trained specific agents for specific functions. Is that right?
Yep.
How many of those do you have? And have you experimented with like, oh, should we just have one or should we have 20 or 500? How do you think about that? And how have you segmented across those different agents?
Yeah, so the right now we have four, and we're building out three more before we launch in January. I think that's really kind of what makes Rezora stand out among a lot of our competitors. Essentially, what a lot of other AI voice companies do is they operate an agency model. So you'll meet with this company, once a week, maybe twice a week, give it some information about yourself, the kind of lead that you're going after, and they'll essentially just be having a conversation with ChatGPT to build out this agent for you. But then all you get is one agent. It's not fine-tuned for your lead type, and you can't go back to the company and change it afterwards. So what we wanted to kind of do is revolutionize the entire way that these voice agents are being used by creating something that's, infinitely scalable, fine-tuned for a specific lead type, and you have an extreme amount of power and customization that you can always go back and change on.
That's great. Which lead type are you finding is like the easiest or the most complicated to handle, and how are you addressing that? Like, is it mostly prompt changes? Is it other integrations like you mentioned with MLS? How do you improve agents?
I think the expired listing lead has had the most success just because often those are people that, for one reason or the other, they weren't able to sell their property on the market. And then someone else can come along and say, hey, I actually specialize in your property type. And, would you be interested in trying again? And almost always the person is because they were just trying to sell it maybe just a month or two ago. I think the open house has lower success rates just because a lot of the time it's a random phone number. The person might not even be interested in looking for a house right now, and at the end of the day Resora is dependent on the leads that people bring onto the platform. So if you upload 100 leads and half of them are bad phone numbers, it's not going to matter how good Resora is. And then in terms of improving those agents for conversions, it's really just more fine tuning. My co-founder's been spending a lot of December just buying additional data off of the internet to fine tune all of these agents, and the improvement is really noticeable just in the test conversations that we run every day.
That's great. Yeah, anything else that you'd add in terms of um, experience you guys have had with trying to improve these agents? Any tips like, hey, don't worry so much about, you know, MCP, or RAG is very useful, or hey, prompt changes actually are enough. I don't know. Anything that you'd want to share with the audience?
Um, Yeah, I think in terms of MCP, that's a good answer. Essentially, the way that we do it is real estate agents are responsible for verifying that the leads that they're bringing onto the platform have authorized to be contacted, which is legally enough to kind of shield us from any liability because they're saying that it's their fault. So that's kind of a pretty easy workaround for anyone else that's interested in building the AI voice company. It varies very much on what kind of leads you're calling. If you're doing this for dentistry, the rules might be slightly different, but that's how it operates for real estate. I'd say the biggest surprise has just been that far more people than you think are actually willing to speak to an AI voice agent, and it's hard to tell whether that's because they don't know that it's real, and sometimes that is the case, or whether they're just interested enough in whatever real estate transaction we're calling them about to engage. But around 60 to 70% of the conversations that we have a positive sentiment or a positive outcome, which is a lot higher than going into this quitting my job did I think was actually going to be possible.
Awesome. And when it comes to those sentiment scores, that seems like really valuable information for you guys to improve the product. How are you getting those sentiment scores? Is that a tool you use as part of that stack? Are humans going in and labeling them manually?
Rezora gives us a little bit of a grade, so the agent is able to go back and evaluate whether the conversation has a positive script. But then obviously we're just manually double checking and being like, okay, this conversation went well, this conversation didn't go well. But of course, everything after the call is done, you already get a summary as to what happened, um, just from the AI, so you can tell, okay, this was useful, this was not useful.
Great. And when it comes to that grade that Rezora does, is that pretty much you take the transcript of the call and you pass it to an LLM and ask, hey, what was the sentiment of the call? Or how do you actually come up with that grade that Rezora gives?
Yeah, exactly what you said.
Awesome. Great. Well, uh, super interesting, and appreciate you sharing, a lot of details about how you guys have built the product. I want to put your website up on the screen for folks to take a quick look. That's resora.io. Um, Tell us who should reach out and how should they get in contact with you guys. I know sounds like you're in kind of a closed beta situation. Are you taking new users at this time? When are you doing a public launch? Yeah, just share with
Yeah.
the audience.
Totally. Yeah. So if you're interested, you can obviously reach out on our website. If you put your email on that list, we're going to be reaching out to everybody who's done so when we launch on the 7th of January. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, just Aidan Richards, of course, if if you're curious, if you want to talk about it, anything like that. But yeah, we're going to be launching in the new year, I think is the main takeaway.
Amazing. And what's the next big feature after launch? I'm sure that's your biggest next goal, but like after that, what's the next big feature set or thing you're working on?
Building on an API is going to be really key just because we have a lot of partners that we've already signed LOIs with, and they're really excited about putting Rezora onto their platform to make it useful for the realtors that they've already signed as customers. So building that out, working with these initial partners, getting that off the ground, seeing how those interactions go, kind of testing, what's effective revenue wise, what's effective product wise. Are those people getting as much of a return out of Rezora as people using the platform directly? And then just scaling really rapidly, trying to hit certain user and revenue targets within the first 3, 6, 12 months, and understanding, is this just as effective at scale as it was in the beta? What needs to be changed? What kind of feedback are we looking for? There's a ton to do once we launch, so I'm very excited for that.
Awesome. Well, yeah, congrats on the upcoming launch and best of luck. I know it's a lot of work, and I assume you guys will be working through the holidays, so hopefully you take some time to take a break. And yeah, everyone listening, again, that's Rezora.io. Aidan, thanks so much for taking the time. It was great to learn more about you and your business.
Thanks, Tyler. I appreciate it.
Bye now.